Okay, so today I want to talk about a little bit of an issue with the Insta360 Luna Ultra, and it concerns the way in which the image is exposed, and it's something you need to be careful of. There is a way around it, but I'm going to show you the effects of what happens. Now, I can't take credit for discovering this. That accolade goes to Philip Bloom. He pointed it out to me, and he goes into it in some detail on his video comparing the different gimbal cameras. But I want to show you the effects that I've discovered, and there are a few nuances here and there depending on which mode you use. Now, the issue generally happens when you're using auto exposure, and in particular the ISO max function. So you can set the camera to go to, for example, 400 ISO maximum, and then it shouldn't go above that. But as you'll see in a moment, that's not really what happens. Now, it's important to understand that ISO is just gain. I know it's got a fancy name, ISO, but it is just electronic gain when it comes to digital cameras. And that's important when we set our cameras to go to, for example, 400 or 800 maximum. So what seems to be happening is that as you go through the shutter range, you increase your shutter speed. The Luna Ultra is trying to compensate for that and give you what it thinks is a better exposure by boosting the image, which means increasing the gain. And while it's doing that, it's also increasing the amount of noise reduction it's doing as well. Now, as I said, ISO is just electronic gain. So it's interesting that the camera is applying more electronic gain, even though you've told it not to go above a certain ISO. Now, my understanding is from Philip that this has been confirmed by Insta360 that this is exactly how the camera is designed to operate. But this is a bit of an issue if you want to get the highest quality image, and I'll show you the effects of it now. So I've got this set up in Resolve, and I've got a few clips here going up through the ranges. Now, I've set one camera here to 400 ISO max, but I've put the shutter onto manual, and I've got another version of the footage here which is fixed at ISO 100, and I'm also using a manual shutter, and you'll see what happens as we go up through the shutter settings. Now, as you can see right from the off, the camera has already boosted the image. You can see the exposure on my forehead there. So it's boosted it because it probably thought this area was underexposed, whereas you can see on my manual exposure, that part of my skin, you can see the texture on my skin there. And I do apologize. There is going to be a lot of looking at my face very close up during this video, so I would suggest you don't eat during the course of it. So as we go up through the ranges, it's not too bad here. But as I go through it and I get to these higher shutter speeds, you can see on the manual exposure and the manual ISO, the image is getting darker, as you'd expect as you go through the shutter speeds, as you increase the shutter speeds. But with the ISO max function on the camera, you can see it's boosting the image to try and keep the exposure, and as it's doing so, you can see the noise reduction kicking in here on the skin. And as we go even further, you can see the noise reduction increasing until we get to these high levels here. I think this is 1/640th of a shutter, and this one was 1/800th, and you can see that the noise reduction is pretty extensive on the face, and the detail is turning to mush. So I've got another example here, and this is with 4K on full auto. So I haven't put an ISO max setting on this one. This one is fully automatic on the shutter and fully automatic on the ISO. And then I've got another version here with a fixed ISO. So again, not ISO max, but a fixed ISO, but I've left the camera on the automatic shutter. And if I go full screen here, you can see there's a difference already. If you look at my beard and the texture of my skin, the camera's already done some sort of boosting. Even though it's in full auto, it still appears to be doing some kind of boosting to the image. And I'm not entirely sure why. You'd have to know the logic in how it adjusts the shutter speed versus the ISO in order to get to the bottom of that, and that's pretty difficult to do without knowing directly from the engineers. But if I go to a 400% zoom, if I get my face in a similar position there, and we go full screen, once again, you can see the effects of the noise reduction on the texture on my skin and on the detail within my beard here. And again, on the eyes as well, you can see detail in the eyes on this one that you can't see on the full auto. So this is interesting behavior. It's problematic behavior in reality, given that Insta360 has designed the camera this way. So they are fully aware of this. My hope is that in a future firmware, they will allow the user to adjust the noise reduction setting, because the Luna Ultra doesn't have a noise reduction setting like the GoPro and the DJI Pocket series. So if we go to 8K, we have slightly different behavior again. So in this shot, once again, I've set it to the 400 max ISO setting, and then I've gone manually through the shutter speeds. And you can see the texture on my skin is looking pretty good. And if we go up through the shutter speeds, it's actually becoming darker. You notice at the beginning of the shot, it's dark, and then it kind of boosts it slightly. Do you see that? But as we go up to the extremes, you'll notice that the 8K version is actually getting darker as I go up through the shutter speed, which is the expected behavior. Now, I think it is still putting noise reduction on the image, but you can see the detail in my beard is actually still pretty good, and the texture of my skin is still pretty good, even at these levels. And here at 1/640th, and here 1/800th. And there doesn't seem to be as much noise reduction being applied in this 8K mode. You can see a bit of noise creeping in instead. So it does seem that the worst of this behavior is occurring in the 4K modes rather than the 8K modes. So as I said, my understanding from Philip is that Insta360 is aware of this, and hopefully this will change in a firmware update. So for now, until there's a fix for this, my recommendation for using the Luna Ultra is to set your shutter speed to auto so the camera can still adjust its exposure with the shutter, but do not use the ISO max setting. Set your ISO to a fixed ISO. In bright daylight or normal daylight conditions, that can be ISO 100. ISO 400 works pretty well as well. But either way, fix your ISO, but leave your shutter speed on auto until Insta360 can issue a firmware update that allows us a bit more control over noise reduction settings, or at least gives the user an option to turn off the automatic boost function. So anyway, I hope this has been a useful video for you. And if you have liked it, please do like and subscribe. And I've got some affiliate links down below. It really does help the channel out hugely and keeps my lights on. If you are interested in buying any of the products, if you can use those affiliate links, that would be absolutely fantastic and very much appreciated. But anyway, that's it for now, and I'll see you all in the next video.